In terms of the early years of Survivor Series, I always have felt that 1989 was a better show than 1988, 1987 from a in-ring standpoint because this time you had 5 matches on the card, and it seemed like to me all of the matches had the appropriate length of time. You had the star power split up, I felt very wonderfully all throughout the show, from the beginning, the middle, to the end. So Survivor Series 1989 is one of those shows, again, that I like to go back and watch. And for a younger generation, it might not be what you would classify as great in-ring action. But for my generation, for me anyways, I think it passes. It's a show that holds up to me relatively well. So, of course, in the Rosemont Horizon, in good old Rosemont, Illinois. Why Rosemont? Because it's not Chicago. No matter how many times WWE tries to tell you it is, it's not. It's close. Just about there. Lots of technicalities. It's called Rosemont for a reason. It's not Chicago. Chicago. Anyways, a couple of interesting things about this pay-per-view. Number one, this was the first year of Survivor Series, if I recall correctly, that they started utilizing team names. And that was another thing about the old Survivor Series I really used to enjoy. We're seeing the teams be named like the Dream Team, the Enforcers, the King's Court, the Hulkamaniacs, the Ultimate Warriors. I love that shit. It's hokey, it's corny, and it's beautiful, and it works. It really, really does. I mean, you look at the star power throughout this show as well, I think is another thing that really works. And, you kick off with the opening match. You've got a team captained by Dusty Rhodes going against a team captained by the Big Boss Man. And this was the first, if I recall correctly, official appearance of Sapphire. I don't like the name, but I always miss good old Miss Wright. I thought she was fun. I thought she added something interesting to the product, needless to say. Dusty Rhodes, baby, and his polka dots, if you will. So now I'm going to talk about that opening tag match, because that's what the American Dream is all about, baby. You can wine and dine with kings and queens. You can sleep in alleys and dine on polka beans. But when you can rock them polka dots, woo! That's funky. Now that's the American Dream, baby. But, fun shit here. It's more about the characters and how they interweave different things. You've got, Rick Martel and Tito Santana, the old Strike Force. They're feuding with each other. Dusty Rhodes, the Big Boss Man. I love how they would keep the individuality of some of these characters, too, like Bad News Brown, the ultimate epitome, of heel. He didn't get along with faces, and just like he did the year before, he didn't get along with the heels. He fucking walks out on the match. Why can't we have bad guys like this that are so bad that even the other bad guys are like, nah, I don't want to fuck with this dude, and this guy's like, I don't want to fuck with them either. It's incredible stuff. Dream Team beats the Enforcers, and we move on. Then you've got the King's Court against the 4x4s, and, the 4x4s. That's really the best name you could possibly come up with for this. It's a 4x4s, but it fit Hacksaw Jim Duggan. But you look at some of the star power in this match, not named Dino Bravo. You have Randy Savage, or it needs to be said, the Canadian Earthquake. Greg the Hammer Valentine, a very, very good and I think sometimes underrated Intercontinental Champion. Bret Hart, a young Bret Hart, an emerging Bret Hart as a singles competitor. And then I guess that would be it. And then Hacksaw Jim Duggan, obviously. Solid stuff, solid characters. Feud between Savage and Duggan. I don't know if I always got it, but the next feud that Savage had, I thought was a lot better. Interesting note about this show is that even though this was at the height of Hulkamania, Vince understood where more of his bread was going to be buttered at some point in time, and he needed to kind of have that trial here and see what would happen, which means he needed to back off of Hogan just a little bit. You had Hogan's team, the Hulkamaniacs, smack dab in the middle of the show taking on the $1 Million Team. And, of course, this has got story going back, almost 2 damn years, between Hogan and DiBiase. It's kind of a placeholder for Hogan. It's kind of a way to re-tie into Demolition turning face and, turning on Mr. Fuji, and the Powers of Pain turning heel and aligning themselves with Mr. Fuji. Of course, you also had Hogan involved with Zeus here, which do I really need to talk about anymore? Shit, it was a main event of SummerSlam that year. It had another show. What the fuck was it called? Was it the match in the movie or some dumb shit in December of that year? Oh, Christ almighty. This is still, though, you got to say, at a time where Vince and the WWF, in a lot of ways, could do no wrong. They could take somebody like Zeus, who had zero business main eventing any freaking wrestling pay-per-view, and found a way to get several damn big shows, big money payoffs out of him and his freaking Zeus character from No Holds Barred. 1989 was the year of No Holds Barred for the WWF and Vince McMahon, and in particular, I guess, Hulk Hogan. And this is when we should have started to figure out that Vince really had aspirations to be a movie studio, not a wrestling company. Hence why Hogan was here in the middle of the card. Did you really want to main event Hogan and Zeus again? Just saying. The Rude Brood beat Rowdy's. And fun shit, Rowdy's. The Rude Brood. You got Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect on the same freaking team. Hell, you throw the Rougeos in there. That's cool shit. Piper and Snuka somehow are on the same team. And the fucking Bushwhackers. Look at all of these unique, interesting characters. I love when the Rougeos were fucking waving the American flag. The Bushwhackers. Lick my head. Everybody had a unique character. Everybody had a shtick. And that's the stuff that made these type of matches work. Because everybody, I think, stood out a little bit more because you could see just how different they were compared to the crowd. Everybody was different. Everybody was unique. And I love that about this time period of the WWE. At the time. But obviously you have Rick Rude, you have Mr. Perfect, you have Rowdy, you have Snuka, the Bushwhackers, the Rougeos. Not a bad match at all. And then you get to the main event, and like I said, this is where I'm talking about. Vince knew what he was setting up to at WrestleMania 6. He knew was going to be buttering a lot of his bread in 1990, and he knew that that was not going to be Hulk Hogan. So as a result, he had to kind of see how it would go. He had to kind of throw it out there. He kind of had to have a trial run of main eventing Warrior at one of his big 4 pay-per-views. He needed to see. He needed to find out. The crowd was getting behind Warrior. The crowd was really starting to dig Warrior. He was getting to that supernova, almost white-hot type of territory, no matter how much people have tried to spin you over the years. It's true. I grew up in that era. A lot of the people in the business and wrestlers in the business from that time frame that tried to dismiss it were jealous because they, in theory, think they did a lot more and they made a hell of a lot less money. Well, maybe they weren't as good as they thought they were, or maybe they were fucking stupid and they weren't as smart and weren't as good of business people as somebody like the Ultimate Warrior. I'm just throwing it out there. Because as a kid who grew up with it at the time, had a lot of friends that watched professional wrestling, who talked about professional wrestling, at that time, there was a real divide among us whether we liked Warrior and Hogan or Hogan better. No question. I mean, you would get arguments. I can even remember going back to this time frame, there were arguments about who would win, Warrior or Hogan. We didn't know that they were going to wrestle at WrestleMania 6. I miss those times talking about professional wrestling like that, man. That was a lot of fun back then. But you got Ultimate Warrior and his team here going against, the Heenan family. You've got Andre, who obviously at this time, his disease was starting to really take a toll on his body. That's why they were getting ready to pair him up with Haku, make them the Colossal Connection, so that way, they could carry the titles, but Haku could do most of the work, and Andre could just kind of be there, but still be a presence, still be a draw. But this match also presented an opportunity for guys like the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the Anvil, Jim Neidhart. They all got to main event a Big 4 pay-per-view, latching on to the Ultimate Warrior. Shit worked. Shit really worked. But again, this was all about Warrior. And sometimes I wonder if they should have had Warrior blow through Andre so much like they did. I don't know. Especially on the house show circuit. I mean, they would have Warrior blow through Andre in short order. And I understand what they were trying to do. I get what they were trying to do. But I'm not always sure that that was the right thing to do. And I'm not always sure that Warrior realized, just was what was being done for him at that time, and maybe he wasn't the right guy for them to do it for. But you look at this, and you've got so many big name players, involved in this show. Both guys for the present, guys from the past in a way, and guys heading forward into the future. You look at the future of the company, and you see guys like Bret Hart being involved, and Shawn Michaels, and you look at the Ultimate Warrior. He's going to be the future soon at this time. Rick Rude. You're thinking maybe Mr. Perfect, maybe. You have the stars of the present, the Hogans, the Andres, the Savages, the Duggins, if you will. Jake the Snake Roberts, he was a part of the Hulkamaniacs. Ted DiBiase. This was a loaded fucking card. Loaded. And even if the matches in theory aren't that great, and even if the stories are so-so, and I think the stories here at the end of '89 were a lot of so-so, frankly, for the WWF. But man, when you have those type of characters, and you have those type of performers, and you have those type of talents all throughout your company from top to bottom, it can make up for a lot of shit. And when you look at Survivor Series '89 in a lot of ways, that's kind of how I look at it. It made up for a lot of shit, just having that level and caliber of performer and star power all throughout the card. Now that's Survivor Series 1989. One of the ones I can't wait to talk about is, no, not Survivor Series 1997, although that's coming, and we all know what direction that's going to go down. I can't wait to talk about the next one. Survivor Series 1990. Easily one of the most memorable Survivor Series of all time, for good reasons and other reasons.